Good morning. Campbell McCrary here, Amvest Capital in New York City, Vice President Capital Markets. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Core Mining Inc. Core trades on the TSX Venture as KORE and as KOREF on the OTCQX. Do hope you'll enjoy today's program. It will also be available in replay mode. Do chat in your questions and we'll ask them in real time. Scott would love to hear from you. And after the show, please share your feedback and we would all appreciate it. Amvest is a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. This event will be available in replay on demand mode about an hour afterwards, and you can easily get it at amvestcapital.com/webinars. We'll also email you the link. Very important disclaimer, this call is most definitely for informational purposes only. Very pleased to have with us today, Scott Trebilcock, making you presenter. If you want to, it's on your webcam, Scott. Scott's the president and CEO of Core, has close to 30 years of experience as a process engineer, management consultant, and mining executive. Most recently, he was the chief development officer of Nevsun Resources, where many people got to know Scott over probably a decade. And he was responsible for strategy, corporate development, IR, and exploration. Nevsun quite nicely sold to Jin Mining for $1.9 billion after a year-long contested defense process led by Scott. Scott also drove the M&A at Nevsun, including the 2016 acquisition of Reservoir Minerals. Again, please send in your questions and would really welcome your participation. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, thanks for having me, Campbell.
You have audio and video, so I'll give you the floor. Take all your time you need.
Okay, good. Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone out there for spending some time today with Core Mining, going through a sort of new presentation for the first time in about a year. We've updated our presentation. We've had recently hired Liz Monger to be our Vice President of Investor Relations. Liz brings multiple decades of IR experience, including her previous role for almost 9 years at Midas Gold. So she's got deep experience in marketing US gold stories and exactly what Core Mining is. So building America's golden future. Let's look through the assets that Core has and why we think it's a great investment. I will be making forward-looking statements. We encourage all shareholders and potential shareholders to thoroughly review our materials, both on our website and on SEDAR, or where they can download all of our materials to understand the risks about investing in small cap investments like Core Mining. So with that, so why do I think Core is a good investment? Well, you know, I've put a lot of my own money into Core, as have management and the board. And you can see that management owns 38% of the equity of Core. We've attracted a strategic investor in Eric Sprott. He's put money in 3 separate investments to get Core going. And we've been using that capital over the last 18 months to start propelling Core into the world of US gold developers. So we'll talk today a bit about the progress we've made on that, as well as some of the great exploration story that we've set up around our great assets in California. So Core has 3.9 million ounces of defined gold resources in the ground. Last year in 2020, led by Mark Leduc, our Chief Operating Officer, who is a Denver-based heap leach mining engineer and eminently experienced mining executive, completed PEAs, or preliminary economic assessments, on both of our deposits, showing a potential $1 billion Canadian in value if we bring those 2 assets forward into production. So that's the type of value we're trying to deliver. For example, but to look sort of current state, Core currently trades at about 100 million market cap. So there's a lot of gain to be made by investing capital advancing these assets. You can juice up that return by using the drill bit to explore and grow. And using Eric Sprott's money, we've created what we think are some incredible exploration stories around these assets. We've got very large 100% owned areas. You know, we're not fighting off others for our claims. We were able to, through land deals and staking, secure all of the upside around these assets. So we're going to be using exploration heavily in 2021 to grow. We are also committed to responsible development in today's day and age, and particularly in California, where you have very stringent labor, environment, and reclamation standards. Making sure you live up to and exceed all of those standards helps you build your social license to operate, and that is the period we're entering in our Southern California asset, where we're actually proposing to build a mine at our Imperial project. From a valuation perspective, core remains attractive on a price to NAV and price to ounces basis. We've seen the shares, like other gold companies, trade off pretty heavily here in the first quarter of 2021, perhaps creating an entry point, certainly at a lower price than the back half of 2020. First thing people usually ask about core is to understand about mining in California. Absolutely, mining in California is possible. It is actually the 4th ranked US mineral producer in 2020 in the entire United States. There's an established regulatory regime, very strict regulations around labor, environment that give you a good, strong social license to operate. The industry employs almost 99,000 people and delivered 0.4% of the GDP of California in 2021. This includes multiple large mining operations. There's a large Rio Tinto mine called Boron. There's the Mountain Pass Minerals operation. And then more recently, California has actually permitted 2 heap leach gold mines, the Castle Mountain mine, which is owned by Equinox Gold. They're currently at 40,000 ounces and ramping up to 200,000. And the Soledad Mountain mine, permitted in 2012, which currently producing about 90,000 ounces. Those mines are in Kern County and San Bernardino County, California. And you'll notice briefly, if I went through all of those slides, it's very important what county you're in California, because California is a vast geographic, very diverse state. And there are many places in California, probably to most people's perceptions, that mining is just not in the cards for that particular county. Imperial County is not such a county where our Imperial project is located. And in fact, it hosts the Mesquite gold mine. This is a picture I actually took out of the window of my airplane as I was flying in sometime early last year. The Mesquite mine has been in Imperial County for 25 years. It's produced 6.4 million ounces of gold to date. It is still operating and is forecast to produce 135,000 ounces this year. Owned by Equinox Gold, it is a major respected employer in Imperial County, California. It directly employs almost 365 people, almost all locals, and provides work for a lot of service providers and knock-on industry in the county. However, the Mesquite mine has very little mine life left. Because they've been mining for 25 years and they're really hemmed in from a claim perspective, there's not a lot of places for them to go for fresh ore. In the years to come, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 years, that mine will be winding down, and that will start creating layoffs. And when we, as Core Mining, engage in Imperial County with local politicians, they respond very well to the responsible creation of jobs to make up for this loss of economic value in already one of the poorest parts of California. So we believe Imperial County is a place that is going to want to continue its long history of gold mining, and I think that's one of the great attributes, tailwinds for our Imperial Gold project. So stepping back to some of the key points I made at the beginning, Core has 3.9 million ounces of gold in the ground. You can see the mix of resources between Long Valley and Imperial. These are very typical low-grade, high-recovery heap leach gold mines. Both projects, Long Valley, Imperial, have simple metallurgy, 100% owned, low strip ratios, and that enables us to comply with these very strict reclamation standards in California. That includes backfilling our mine and leaving the site in basically a greenfield state. So we have to reclaim our projects to a greenfield state. That introduces quite a bit of cost. And that's exactly why these assets are owned by Core, because in the 1990s and 2000s, when gold was 300, 400, 500, 600 bucks an ounce, mining companies could not afford to backfill and expend all that cost to meet this high environmental and reclamation standard. And as a result, gold mining, drifted away from California in the 2000s and 2010s. More recently, as you saw from my previous charts, gold mining has started to come back from California simply because you can, above $1,000 gold, afford to meet these very stringent standards and still have a strong business case for both your investors and use of capital. And that was demonstrated at both of our assets in 2020 with the mine plans and preliminary economic assessments we put around these projects. They're both high IRR, so that's largely because of low capital intensity projects. They are both very simple. Imperial is a run-of-mine heap leach, so you basically drill and blast the material out of the open pit and stack it on a heap leach pad. There's no crushing, no grinding, no tailings ponds, and that makes these projects very simple and very attractive from a return on invested capital. Both are significant in scale. Imperial is forecasted to produce over 146,000 ounces per year on average over its mine life, and Long Valley over 100,000 ounces. And we've got the ability to grow those profiles with exploration. So overall, these are very attractive mid-tier gold projects in a very small market cap company in Core. And as we de-risk and move these projects forward, we want to attract a lot of attention and compared to the other gold developers in the Great Basin in the United States. So just a little bit more on Imperial County. So Imperial County is located right at the Mexico-Arizona border. The county has a long 150-year history of gold mining that included 4 open pit heap leach gold mines in the 1980s and 90s. That was Mesquite, American Girl, Tumco, and Picacho. Goldfields and Newmont were the major players in Imperial County in the 1990s. And on those strict environmental regulations and a pullback in the gold price, gold mining left Imperial County other than the Mesquite mine. However, what's left behind is a strong regulatory framework, a long history of mining in the county that gives us an experienced bureaucracy that understands mining. So we're not going to a place and proposing, to use cyanide to heap leach a gold mine in a place that's never had that, because they've been using cyanide at Mesquite for 25 years just up the road with no issues to the community or impact to the water resources. So I think all of these things are great tailwinds when we're proposing to develop a mine in a particular location. Our mine will bring lots of economic development to the county, and we think all of these reasons are why we will garner strong political support locally, which is ultimately what you need to fend your way through the United States federal permitting process, because the project is located on Bureau of Land Management federal land in California, as is Mesquite. Zooming in the map a little bit more, Core controls really the entire historical gold district that was mined in the 80s and 90s. We went in with Eric Sprott's investments, and one of our key pitches to him was we can secure an entire gold district inside a Core if we go in early. And we went in 2019, did some land deals and staking, and we secured almost 21,000 acres of exploration upside around this Imperial project. We're currently engineering the Imperial project to move it into the permitting process in the back half of this year, while in parallel with that, starting to explore this huge exploration upside around the project. If you look at our news releases over the last 6 months, you'll see, I think, 3 news releases around the prospecting work we've been doing around Imperial. We've been doing geophysics, ground surveys, mapping, really setting up to start drilling on the back half of 2021 to try and make some new multi-million ounce oxide gold discoveries. We've been able to find anomalous gold between Mesquite and Imperial. We've can show with geophysics that there's the same fault structures that control Mesquite and Imperial on strike between the 2 deposits. And as a result, we think we've got some really good drill targets, and we're currently permitting a large program, almost 150 drill pads, to go test some of these targets in the back half of 2020. And we're expecting to get that drill permit in the middle of this year. Heading into that, you will be seeing more news releases coming out of Core. We've got the entire eastern area of the district from Imperial over to Picacho still pending in a news release, as well as more sampling and geophysics around that Mesquite area, trying to decide which of the multitude of targets we have here are the ones we're going to drill test first. Moving up to our second asset, Long Valley, we're very much in exploration mode. We, in 2020, using Eric Sprott's investment, did a lot of groundwork that led us to stake a large district scale land package, 14,000 acres around the original claims that host the current resource. We're currently permitting a 15,000 meter drill program to go step out and continue to grow the near surface oxide resources that were subject to that great PEA. And we're expecting to get drill permits here in the very near term and to be drilling in late Q2 to start testing some of these upsides. The objective of that drilling is to grow the resources in the ground, and in addition to that, test for never explored before sulfides underneath the oxide gold deposit. So the genesis of this gold deposit is an epithermal gold deposit. These deposits, particularly when they're young and haven't been broken up by tectonic action over the years, tend to have high grades at depth. You know, you can look at the Lahire deposit as probably the hallmark project that we would hold out as being very similar to Imperial. Great, incredible grades. And we think we can tap some of those grades at depth by drilling underneath this very large footprint shallow oxide deposit we have. So two purposes for our drilling at Long Valley: step out and grow the resources, add more ounces to core, as well as to test some of these high-grade sulfide feeder structures and see if we can discover some high-grade underground potential on the project as well. From a valuation perspective, Core is about 100 million market cap. We've seen the shares come off into the 80 cents Canadian range. We've been trading between 80 and 90 over the last week or so. We've been as high as $1.80 in 2020. So that pullback, I think, creates a great opportunity for new investors looking to speculate in junior gold stocks. So sort of wrapping all that around in a circle, Core has 3.9 million ounces in the ground of back valuation of the company. We've shown the economic value of those ounces in the ground with our two preliminary economic assessments. We're moving one of those assets, Imperial, into the mine permitting process later this year, and we're exploring to grow the ounces in the ground at both projects through the course of 2021. So great exploration upside. You know, management, we still have a very tight share register with large management and strategic investor ownership. We have an opportunity this year, you know, and one of the reasons we've brought Liz Monger on board, our VP of IR, is to, you know, help us expand our share register, get Core's name into a wider group of investments, and hopefully attract some institutional investors in Core in 2021 as we continue to grow the market cap and per share valuation of the company. So I think great situation for Core. We're headed into an exciting 2021 with the drill bit and moving into the permitting process at Imperial. So lots going on inside the company. Why don't I stop there and let's hear what those out there listening are thinking about and want to know more about.
Please send in your questions. Got a few already, but there we go. This present shareholder, when will we get the new cost basis for each of the Core and KOREF spinoffs? And when was the right offering sent to all shareholders? So I guess just kind of address that.
That's
housekeeping.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's related to, so in 2020, Core actually had another asset inside the company, which we put together, again, an incredible land package in the Caribou region of British Columbia, right next to a Cisco Development Corp. And when that company started taking off in 2020, we made the decision to spin out those assets into a company called KOREF Gold. So this investor is asking about the subsequent rights offering that we just completed on KOREF after spinning it out to our shareholders. So all shareholders in Core were offered the opportunity to participate in the rights offering. Obviously, there are limitations in some cases, the type of investors that can buy stock in a placement in Canada, but all investors were certainly offered those rights. All investors should now be settling through their brokerages and receiving their rights. What was the question again, Campbell?
Cost basis and the rights offering. Was it sent to all shareholders?
Yeah, rights offering was cost basis. I don't believe we've yet published a cost basis that the investors can use in reporting, but they received those shares in 2021, so it shouldn't be a tax issue for people to report until 2022. I think we're contemplating putting an FAQ with an internal valuation that we did, but the rights offering were at 15 cents. So I think that's a pretty obvious place to value what you have in there today. The new leader of the company, a guy named Andrew Kipe, we're really excited to have leading KOREF. We'll be taking that company public in the coming months, which will eliminate the need for cost basis because it will be a listed company in the very near term.
Will you need an autoclave or roaster to process the sulfidic gold?
Yeah, good question. So what are we looking for at Long Valley? So that's this Long Valley. We've got this very large 3 by 2 kilometer, which is actually quite a large footprint for a deposit. That's because the oxide gold at Long Valley is very thin. And a lot of the drill holes that were put into that deposit in the 90s ended in sulfides. And that's because Royal Gold, who was exploring the asset in those days, had told their geologists, if you hit sulfide, stop the drill hole, step out and drill again. So we've got drill holes that end in 1, 2, 3 grams per ton sulfides. We've also used geophysics to look underneath those sulfides, and we believe we can trace some of the structures that might be controlling the feeder zone, which is where the gold is coming up from a heat source at depth to deposit it near surface. So what we are drilling for at depth, 200 or 300 meters under the current deposit, are sulfides. Typically, these sulfides would require a mill. They are likely refractory. So in our minds, if we're successful finding anything, you're only 6 miles as the crow flies, about 9 on a road from Nevada. You'd probably ship upgraded ore to Nevada for processing, put it into the roaster at one of the mills in Nevada, or if it's not refractory, just into another mill in Nevada. So I don't think we would want to permit tailings in a roaster in California. Like, good luck. We would like to ship the ore across the border.
Can you speak to the exploration plan at Imperial when looking for new discoveries, and how deep do you plan to drill?
Yep, so the exploration plan at Imperial. So we've got this 28-kilometer trend with that kind of right in the middle of that is the Imperial project. So the actual Imperial deposit itself is quite well drilled. There probably are some upside opportunities on strike and infill drilling and defining some of the structures. We can probably get some more ounces into that mine plan, but they would be the hundreds of thousands of ounces. But stepping out from that deposit on strike, you've now got let's call it 12 kilometers in each direction towards Mesquite and towards Picacho in the east to explore undercover for new deposits. So the 3 deposits we talk about, Mesquite, Imperial, and Picacho, all outcropped. Everything in between is covered by non-native sand and gravel. And in the 1990s, when gold was $300 an ounce, nobody in the deserts in the United States looked undercover because it was just too hard. They were discovering things through outcrop and following placer mining operations. So Core is for the first time going to explore under this cover. We don't want to, we'll be drilling under, anything that's in tens of meters of cover. We wanted to find another 1 million ounce plus pod of oxide mineralization so we can establish yet another heap leach mine on this belt. That's what we're trying to discover. We would not drill anything deeper than 200 meters because if it's not an open pit mine in oxides, forget about it.
Someone alluded to a delay between receiving drill permits and actual drills on the ground. Is there a delay, and if so, why and how much?
Yeah, good question. So we're not permitted, let's be clear, for either Long Valley or Imperial yet. We are working with our federal regulators on both projects currently to do the environmental impact assessment and deal with all the agencies and the bureaucracy that you have to get to drill permits in the United States, which is quite an onerous process. We've been in that process, however, for quite a while. Like, we've been working with the Forest Service now for over 8 months in our Long Valley project, and we believe we see the line at the end of the tunnel. In fact, we're currently soliciting drill contractors to start drilling that project in June. So ideally at Long Valley, we don't want to see any delay between getting permits and starting drilling, simply because we're waiting to get the permit to start. Core right now doesn't have the staff to drill 2 projects at the same time. So, you know, we will expect that we will get our permit, start drilling at Long Valley, complete that program, and if things go according to plan, we'll be able to remove our exploration team then down to start drilling the exploration targets at Imperial later in 2021. So ideally, we'd like to do them in series and not parallel. And in that case, it'll depend more on when we finish drilling at Long Valley and when we get the permit at Imperial to when we start. So I think if you do it right, you do not have to have a delay between permit and start of drilling that's significant.
Someone wrote in that he believed there had been some permitting problems with the Indian tribes near Imperial. Was that the case? Maybe some background there, and then how are you handling it as the new guy on the block? So
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so in the 1990s, this project was taken through a feasibility study by Glamis. They proposed a mine here, and the BLM at the time went out to stakeholders, and one of the stakeholders that opposed the mining was a tribe out of Yuma, Arizona, and they opposed the project ultimately on viewscape issues, and they didn't want, you know, culturally on some of their historic lands to have a big giant hole in the ground left there forever and a heap leach pad. You know, mining, you know, in the 80s and 90s, there was no standard where you had to kind of fix it up other than from a basic environmental perspective. And they, you know, these things leave pretty ugly marks on the landscape in the long term. I think what's different today is Core's plan 100% backfills and reclaims the site to basically original topography. You'll never know it's there. So there is no long-term viewscape issue anymore. And ultimately, it's Core's, you know, to get social license to operate, we need the balance of all stakeholders in the region to support the project if the BLM will ever grant us a permit. And as we go through the public consultation process, we will be engaging with all stakeholders in the region to garner that support.
okay, then I'm gonna take a break. Stu?
Yeah, thanks, President Scott. I like the new updated presentation. Looks good. But some of those slides on the mines in California I thought were useful. There were some stats I didn't realize as well. And
yeah, I mean, I think the importance of those, just a little voiceover, is that you know, it's important whenever you go into a place to permit something that there's an experienced bureaucracy. Like, you don't walk into, you know, an office in California and they don't understand, because they, you know, with the massive history of mining there, they deal with closed mines, all kinds of historic issues related to mines, operating mines, and making sure that, you know, when you have to educate a bureaucracy, that just creates that much more time lag in trying to get things done.
definitely. Have you seen with like the focus on the MP materials, Mountain Pass mine, you know, bring more people aware to mining California?
Not directly. I had actually had to educate myself a little bit about MP Minerals. I think it's, you know, because it's not a Canadian company, it doesn't get a lot of splash, you know, up here in Canada, so you don't hear much about it. So it was kind of through educating and trying to, you know, make sure that we're presenting, you know, forward in as people consider our company, to make sure we're educated on mining in California. I spent some time on it. I actually don't know a huge amount about the operation. I've driven by it. That's about it.
Yeah, fair enough. And then on Long Valley, so the sulfide targets and the drill permits, is that for both infill and expansion drilling?
There's no
Or-
infill. No, all of the drill pads we're permitting are step out. So when Royal Gold drilled the deposit, they drilled, I think, on 4 seasons of drilling in 92 to 96. Then the gold price started to go down. They stopped drilling, and they really left the project in the midst of resource development. So we're simply going back and stepping out from the existing mineralization 50 meters, 100 meters, 200 meters, and trying to show that this oxide mineralization continues. We want to add more ounces ultimately to the plan. But because of the configuration of those holes, you know, off each pad, we're going to drill a fan. So you can drill, you know, into the oxides, but if you angle your hole right, you can also go underneath the existing mineralization and, you know, test this boiling zone, which is very speculative early stage exploration. But if you can put an underground component onto a project, I think you're that much ahead of being able to get something proposed that's permittable.
Yeah, great. And in this area in Long Valley, are there any other deposits you can use as analogies for this exploration model?
Well, yeah, because you're literally in the Walker Lane Trend of Nevada. So this is the same as a lot of the gold deposits in and around Hawthorne and south of Reno in Nevada. It's the same terrain. It just happens to be on the California side of the border, which is the only reason it's still there. So there's lots. However, this one is just a lot younger geologically than a lot of the ones in Nevada. So it hasn't been all broken up over time with faulting. So, we think there's good potential for a boiling zone down there, but again, much more speculative exploration, but it really just trying to add another element to the story.
Yeah, and then the sulfide targets, how close are they, do you think, to the existing resource? You just mentioned you might be able to drill through the oxides to get through it.
Yeah, if they existed for sure they're there, because this system is probably still forming. There's a geothermal plant about 10 miles away. You're in the middle of a very young shield volcano caldera here, which is probably what's driven the heat source that's driven ultimately the creation of this deposit. So we kind of look at the deposit models like a Lahire, not to try and claim that it's the 20 million ounce monster like Lahire is, but it's got that same early in the middle of a volcano genesis, and we think that therefore has the potential for some good grades at depth. And we'd be looking at the boiling zone. If you read the papers, should be 100 to 300 meters below your oxide zone, and what we see from from evidence at surface and in the past drilling.
Right. Yeah, that would be exciting to intersect that sulfide zone. And just a question on if you were to compare the permitting process of Imperial versus Long Valley, is one more advanced than the other, you think, or it's hard to tell?
Yeah, for drill permitting, we are more advanced at Long Valley. We've been working with the regulator for a longer period of time, and just there is, until you get an MOU in place on these projects, your timeline's kind of variable. It gets kind of when the bureaucracy gets around it, and it certainly has not helped. There's no doubt we've taken a quarter or two delay on these permitting activities because of COVID. On and off, the bureaucracy in California has been shut down. You can't actually go to anyone's office for the last year, which certainly has not helped. But I think we're seeing that clear away as the vaccinations come out and things open up again in the United States. We've seen the bureaucracy down there become more responsive. And I think our timelines now are starting to get to that point where they're very fixed. So I think we're pleased with our progress with the regulators. But without a doubt, we will get Long Valley before Imperial.
Yeah. And do you wait to get them before lining up drill contractors, or do you already have contractors lined up?
We're currently putting out our RFP for drillers because with all of the money flowing into the sector last year, there's going to be quite a bit of drilling in the Great Basin, and we want to make sure we're in line with the drill contractors pipeline, so we can actually get a drill in a timely manner on the project. So far, the feedback on the RFP process is that we look like we're going to be able to secure equipment to actually do the drilling in the time we want. But we're a small company, so we'll try not to pay anything until we get the really line of sight to the permits, so we don't waste any money.
Yeah. And then are you seeing changes in costs of drilling as due to increased activity, more demand, etc.?
Yeah, that would be anecdotal because we didn't drill in the United States last year. We only drilled in Canada. For sure, you've seen cost escalation and competitive escalation in the drillers in BC. And I imagine the same is true from down in California. We have an on-the-ground geo that's full-time at our Imperial office, and some great consultants that helped us during the year. And yes, no doubt drilling's gotten tighter, but we haven't seen significant increases. And certainly we'd already accounted for that in our budgets.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for that, Gabe.
Thanks. Just have a couple questions, Scott. Around first one, just around the characteristics of the rock, and have you seen any sort of nasties or any sort of trace elements that could be problematic?
At which project?
At either of the two that you're, I guess, Imperial or Long Valley are the two that you're trying to get.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an easy answer for Imperial. Imperial is 100% oxide. So, even the issue, an issue that's still significant today, but there's mitigation tech, acid rock drainage, that's the type of thing you worry about when you have big waste dumps and these types of things. But you only have to worry about that if you've got sulfides in your rock, and in Imperial, there's zero. So no, Imperial is as simple and easy as metallurgy gets. There's no nasties in the rock. Everything's just dead simple. Long Valley, different story. So Long Valley has sulfides. It's an oxidized sulfide deposit still connected. So you get oxides, transition sulfides. So you have to certainly, mitigate in your, when you get into operations, issues of acid rock drainage from waste dumps, because there will be some sulfides in there. Being an intact epithermal deposit, there are other things that you have to worry about, but certainly, managing water on your site mitigates, all of those types of things. And I think we've got good water management plans, because you have to, because of the high environmental standards in California in all of our projects.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And then obviously you mentioned a couple times in the call, you've had some delays on permitting and it's been an 8-month process. Can you just, for everyone listening, just give us some color and some visibility into, kind of what you've gone through and where you are now and why you think there's sort of a fixed timeline now to June?
Yeah, exactly. What we've gone through. Well, first off, core in the end, we only hired staff in the middle of last year. So we've only had staff in California for like 9 months now. And ahead of that, and prior to that, it was dealing through consultants, which there's some great consultants out there, but they're not really driving action. When we saw California go into lockdown in Q2 of last year, everything just sort of seized up as far as getting responses from bureaucracy. And you basically have to get to know your regulators, and in a non-face-to-face world with COVID, that's very very difficult. The relationship still matters. So as we've moved through that process and the bureaucracies have reopened, we've seen them become more responsive. We've gotten our plans of operations approved, and we think we're on the we have the timelines nailed down now. It's simply because you've been working on it. But in the end, drill permitting on BLM land, whether it's Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, or California, takes 6 to 12 months. And it just depends on how big your disturbance is and how much EA work you have to do, whether it's 6 or 12. So we're not actually that far off, which what would be expected.
Okay, and then just you mentioned sort of June here now. Is there any potential for slippage of that date? And if so, what would be that?
Yeah, so at Long Valley, Long Valley, we are expecting to drill in late Q2. Now, there's also snow at this site, and certain species, that particularly the sage grouse, where you can't drill till June 15th anyways. That's just a California high altitude thing. So ultimately, we'd like to be out there drilling in the back half of June if we're able to by our permits, and I think we're on track to do that. But in the world of permitting, there's risk. Anything can get delayed. But I think we're getting more and more confident that we're on track for a very tight window, which is why we're starting to engage with drillers. And then at Imperial, we're saying mid-year, which gives you multiple months of flex around that, because you're still far enough out and there's enough moving pieces. You still got sort of months of, is it going to be July, August, September? Don't know yet. So as you get closer, these timelines tighten up. And it's just simply because you're dealing with, you don't in the United States deal with one agency in doing anything. You've managed to create yourselves some great bureaucracy down there in the US, I'll tell you, between state and federal and local agencies and information and coordination. It's complex, and once all the agencies are functioning, it becomes much easier to fix timelines.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that color. Thank you. Artie?
Thank you. How many different domains you have in your resource when it comes to leaching responses? And what are the blending needs of the ore that is going to be transferred to the pads?
Did they say which project? It's different at both.
Imperial.
Okay, that's good because Imperial is easy. There's only one domain, oxide. So there is no metallurgical difference across the whole deposit. It's not like there's like at Long Valley there are oxides, which are primarily the material used for the heap leach, and there's transition sulfides where your metallurgical characteristics and recoveries go down. Imperial is as dead simple as it gets. 100% oxide. It's all the same. It's a single lenticular ore body that's been broken up by a couple faults, and it's dead simple. So everything you mine that's above grade goes on the pad. Simple
So you don't have to blend the run-of-mine material at all for the grade. You just
Nope.
carry it to the pads.
Yep, simple as it gets. Yep. Yeah, now there is an option. So when Core did our PEA, if you just look back, we're a small company, so our objective was to put forward the lowest CapEx solution to build the mine. I think if a mid-tier miner, or I think ultimately Core would in a feasibility study, we would probably put a crusher between the mine and the pad, because we can increase our recoveries by somewhere between 5 and 10% with crushing. And certainly at $1,600 gold, the business case is wildly in favor of putting in the crusher. However, we wanted to publish a very low capex number, so we did not put that in. So we could both get a higher NAV with some more capex by putting in a crusher. But right now it's just straight run of mine, drill blast, everything above grade goes on the pad.
If you prefer one, like between Imperial and Long Valley, beside exploration upsides, what are some profitability indicators for both projects that we can compare?
Sorry, ask that again.
If you have to like prefer one project over the another between Imperial and Long Valley, how we can choose one if we ignore the exploration upsides?
Yeah, without a doubt, Imperial. I mean, everything about Imperial is more advanced. There's been more historic technical work at Imperial. We've got a drilled water well and a hydrogeologic model. We've got the benefit of all the past work done on the project. It's well drilled from a from a resource perspective. The metallurgy is very well defined. It's simple. There's a very low technical risk at the project, and it's just that much more advanced, which is exactly why we're moving right into the mine permitting process, because we don't feel we need to do more work to say what you would build. At Long Valley, it's very much a PEA stage project. If we're successful with the drill bit, we would probably do a new resource and an updated PEA or a PFS, hopefully on a much larger, longer life operation if we're successful growing that resource. So very different stages, and given that we want to be a mine developer, I'd pick Imperial to take forward or allocate capital first all the time. But from an exploration perspective, they both have equal chances to grow significantly. So we're going to continue to allocate capital across both assets.
Thank you, Campbell.
Yeah, excellent. I think we're gonna wrap up very soon. I would just maybe, Scott, if you want to summarize yet once again the value proposition and upcoming catalysts, and why buy now. So a lot of good gold plays. What's your internally generated momentum?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for Core, momentum is very much going to be generated by exploration in 2021. And very similar to what drove Core in 2020. We saw a great performance in the stock in Q2 and Q3 of 2020 on the back of really our exploration and our now spun out British Columbia assets. And we see having similar traction on the exploration side on the US assets this year with our drilling we've talked about extensively at both Long Valley and Imperial on the exploration side. That said, in the background, we've got a team of professionals in Imperial County moving Imperial into permitting and starting the process of de-risking towards that $1 billion NAV potential and trying to get some of that baked into the market cap of the company. You've also seen the shares trade down heavily, and because we have the tight ownership between Eric and the insiders, the stock has enough liquidity for institutional positions, but not for retail positions, but not institutions. And it's great because when you have good news and markets are hot, the stock goes up like a rocket, but it can also go down equally quickly on that liquidity. So we've certainly seen a trading opportunity with the shares trading down significantly. So, you know, those would be my primary opportunities for a new investor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Got to most of the questions, but you know, let me know if you're still not satisfied.
Fire the rest of them through. We'll make sure
Yeah.
we get back to everybody
And,
on your list, and really appreciate your time.
Excited to have Liz Monger on board. How do we reach her? What's her email?
You can just go into info@KORE. She monitors all of our inbound things. Go on our website, submit a question. It'll all go right to Liz, and we'll answer anything you want to hear about.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Peace to everybody. Cheers.
Thanks.
Peace or cheers.